Hey, welcome back to the show. We've got three great stories to discuss with you today, starting with Venezuela, where the United States has just seized the biggest tanker in our history. We'll also talk about the economy, where some polls have 57% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. And we're also going to cover the pending healthcare crisis since Obamacare subsidies failed to be extended. That and much more coming up right now. So let's go ahead and start with the first story, which is Venezuela. The United States has just seized the greatest and biggest tanker we've ever seized in the country's history. Take a look.
This video, released tonight by the Attorney General, shows U.S. forces fast roping from helicopters, storming the deck with their guns drawn as they seize control of a massive oil tanker off Venezuela's coast.
President Trump was asked about the seizure of the boat, and this is what he said.
As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later, and you'll be talking about that later with some other people.
Now, we all know, by now, we know our politicians. We know that once this happened, there was going to be outrage, particularly from the left. The outrage was going to revolve around the fact that this is completely illegal. We cannot seize assets like that. But that is false. Every politician should know that we can seize assets like that. And this is not the first time that it happens. And every politician that represents you in Washington, D.C. should understand that under international law, we have the right to do that. But apparently they don't.
Oh, for more on the U.S. presence in the Caribbean, I'm joined by House Armed Services Committee Ranking Member Adam Smith. So, Congressman, do you think the American seizure of the tanker was the right move? And if the goal is to further pressure the Maduro regime ahead of possible land strikes, do you think it will work?
No, I don't think it's the right move, and he hasn't adequately explained it. I mean, why did we seize this oil tanker? And threatening war against Venezuela, I think, is a major mistake.
Well, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. That is your politician representing you and not even knowing why we seized that boat. He didn't know that we had a warrant to seize that boat. He didn't know that that same boat had a tracking system that had it pinging thousands of miles away. And why is he coming on national television talking about this situation if he knows nothing about it? At least do your research before you come on national TV to talk to the American people about it. That is why we have so little confidence in our politicians. Look, as a global affairs analyst, I can tell you right now that this action was legal. But if you don't want to take my word for it, listen to a different global affairs analyst.
But this action, from what I can tell, is actually kind of by the book. This ship, Anderson, was actually sanctioned by the Treasury Department in 2022. So in the Biden administration, there was a warrant issued by a federal court about 2 weeks ago for a civil forfeiture action. And when that happens, and this happened in the Biden administration, I was a part of some of these, the Justice Department, or out of it, back from intelligence, you might be able to find the ship. The Justice Department will say, can we seize this ship? Is there a way to do it? There might be foreign policy implications. But we've done this in the past. And this ship was actually implicated for smuggling Iranian oil to benefit the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps under U.S. criminal authorities. So if that's what happened here, this is actually not totally out of the ordinary, and I would not categorize this the same as the kinetic strikes against the narco boats, which is very novel and raises serious questions.
There it is. Back in 2023, we did the exact same thing. It was flying under a false flag and carrying 800,000 barrels of oil that was going to support terrorist organizations that look to do us harm. The pressure on Maduro is only going to continue to get worse. So don't let his dancing fool you.
Una rueda de prensa de las personalidades más importantes del Comité de Paz de Oslo, rechazando que se llenara de sangre y guerra el premio Nobel. No more Vietnam. No more Somalia. No more Iraq. No more Afghanistan. No more Libya. Basta de guerras eternas, carajo. Basta de guerra.
Do you hear this guy? This guy's an absolute clown. No more war? How about the war that he's waging on the Venezuelan people? On the thousands of political opponents that he has jailed. Can we stop the war on them? Maria Corina Machado had to go into hiding because she was fearing for her life, because you know for a fact that he wants her dead. He knows for a fact that once he's out of power, she's going to take over. Now, speaking of Maria Corina Machado, she had to be snuck out of the country just to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. Look, I know Americans are expressing concern about what's going to happen with Russia's involvement in Venezuela if we decide to take action against them, right? Against Venezuela. Now, I can tell you, President Trump is not going to allow Russia to get involved. And now a lot of you are saying, well, what's happening in Ukraine? That's not our backyard. President Trump is going to be a hardliner when it comes to everything that happens in our own backyard. Remember, what's happening in the Ukraine has geopolitical implications, but it has really no direct impact on us right now. But when you talk about Russia coming into Venezuela, that's going to have a tangible impact on us here. And the president is not going to allow that to happen. So let's go ahead and move on to our next topic, which is the economy. Americans continue to hurt at the grocery store. I feel the pain. Every American feels the pain right now. Some reports have it that 57% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. But when you hear President Trump talk about the economy, he makes it sound like everything is great. Listen to this.
I do want to talk about the economy, sir, here at home. And I wonder what grade you would give
A plus.
Economy. A plus.
Yeah, A plus, 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 plus.
I can tell you that most Americans don't think that the economy is an A plus, 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 plus. Most Americans are hurting at the grocery stores right now. We all feel the pinch when it comes to trying to stretch out the dollar. But don't tell President Trump that. Don't tell him that you're struggling with affordability, because this is what he's going to say.
Affordability. They just say the word. It doesn't mean anything to anybody. Affordability is a Democrat scam. Affordability is a con job. They use the word affordability. Affordability, 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 affordability.
Many Americans strongly disagree. A recent CBS News YouGov poll found 60% believe the president makes things sound better than they really are when it comes to prices and inflation. 27% said he's right on point. 13% feel he paints a gloomier economic picture than what's really happening.
Now, that is more in line with what we feel like as Americans every time we go to the grocery store. I think Bill O'Reilly was right. I think the president needs to appoint a cost of living czar, somebody that can communicate the message of what the administration is doing to relieve the pressures that we feel every time we make a purchase. Scott Bessent and Kevin Hassett are not the people to put out there to talk to the American people. Those two guys focus on macro level economics. We need somebody that can talk to us about micro level economics, why it is that we're paying more at the store. And if it's temporary, tell us why. Tell us when we're going to have some relief. And I know President Trump is now touring the whole United States talking about the economy, trying to explain to people what he has done and how the economy is doing. But what he's saying is repeating the same thing. We don't have an affordability issue. We do. We're struggling at the grocery store right now. We're struggling to pay insurance, car insurance, property insurance, health insurance. We're struggling to pay all of that right now. Now, add on top of that the fact that the ACA subsidies, the ACA healthcare subsidies weren't extended. People are really going to be hurting. So he needs to have somebody that's going to tour with them and explain what's happening with our economy. President Trump has assigned people to an endless number of positions. Why can't he hire somebody that is an affordability or a cost of living czar that can explain everything that he's doing to the American people in a way that they understand it? Now, there's one part that bothers me the most when it comes to the economic hardships that Americans are going through right now. And this is it right here.
In the most recent jobs report, that's from September, we can see the blue line, that's wages. They are going up at a faster pace than the red line, which is inflation. However, you can see the gap in the last few months, it's starting to narrow, which means that inflation is catching up to prices, not what you want to see. But this is in aggregate, and this is as of September. So let's zoom in a little bit. Bank of America put out a new report where they find that among high-income households, wages are up by 4%, well ahead of that 3% inflation. That's great, most since October of 2021. But unfortunately, that's just for high income earners, right? When you look at middle income households, wage growth is much, much softer. It's just 2.3%. That's the middle bar here. That's actually trailing inflation, which is on the left. That's not great at all. And look at this, low income wages are up just 1.4% as of November. That is less than half the pace of inflation.
So in other words, the rich continue to get richer and the poor continue to get poor. How does that make sense? These are the issues that President Trump needs to be talking about. He needs to connect the dots and say, I understand that people in the lower socioeconomic spectrum are not making wages that are in line or exceeding inflation. Let me tell you what I'm doing to fix that. But that's not what he's doing. All he's doing is saying that these problems, these affordability issues don't exist. And I don't understand why the Democrats aren't taking advantage of that. This is a prime opportunity for them to do that. What are they focused on? They're focused on Venezuela and the legality of everything that he's doing there. Just a reminder, 70% of Americans don't care what's happening in Venezuela. So the Democrats need to stay away from that and focus on the economy, on what matters to the people every day. I know there are a lot of people out there that say, well, the tariffs are to blame for the high prices right now on everything. And that's not true. Tariffs are to blame for some prices, but not for all. I think what's happening here, a lot of companies are price gouging. Just like when we had COVID and prices went through the roof, and then shortly thereafter, you expected prices to come down on some commodities, and they never did. That's what appears to be happening right now. It seems like although energy prices are low, in some areas, gas is below $2. That needs to be researched. We need to figure out why prices aren't going down. President Trump did announce a $12 billion aid package to farmers. Listen here.
Well, we're getting new information this morning about the $12 billion farm aid package President Trump just announced. A White House official says most of the aid will go toward crop farmers through one-time payments under the Farmer Bridge Assistance. The rest will be put aside for specialty farmers. The president said the package would not be possible without his tariffs. Those tariffs are also one of the reasons farmers need a bailout in the first place as they struggle to sell crops because of the trade policies.
I'm going to stop the video right there because what he just said is false. He's saying that these farmers expressly need these aid packages because of the tariffs. That is false.
The Agriculture Secretary, Brooke Rollins, was asked by CNN's Caitlin Collins whether the tariffs and trade policies have contributed to the situation that you and other farmers are facing right now. I want you to listen to what the Secretary said.
There is almost zero evidence, if any evidence, that what they are doing and the challenges that our farm economy is facing in row crops has anything to do with these trade renegotiations.
The reason farmers need aid packages is because farming is a dying industry in the United States. And the reason it's a dying industry in the United States is because we are unable to ship our products overseas. And why is that? Because we're being taxed. We are being taxed. And in return, we're not taxing anybody. Do you know that China just reported a $1 trillion trade surplus? Do we have a surplus in this country? We don't. Why is that? Because a lot of our products cannot be shipped overseas to different countries. But in this country, we're not doing the same thing. Now, when President Trump did it, it was outrage. Remember, the purpose of the tariffs that President Trump put into place were to broaden our markets, to open up the foreign markets for our farmers. Remember, before they couldn't even ship products overseas because they were being taxed so much that there was no profit. But if you don't believe me, let's listen to what the farmer has to say about tariffs and the impact they've had on farming.
She said your situation has nothing to do with the trade policies. What do you think about that?
Well, I think our situation is a combination of lack of market-based opportunities, which goes back to trade. We need a level playing field to sell our soybeans and other commodities. It also goes back, as I mentioned earlier, to the inflated cost of production that we have. And this is something that's been a problem going on 5-6 years, and it's really getting serious. Examples would be 5 years ago, phosphate fertilizer was less than half the cost that it is right now. We can look at our cost of equipment, seed, pesticides, everything we do is going up, and our commodity prices, unfortunately, don't reflect that.
How many times did you hear him say, tariffs have killed my business? Not once. Ladies and gentlemen, 80% of farms in the United States operate at breaking even or negative profit margins. That's right, negative profit margin. The farming industry has been dying for a very long time in the United States, and nobody has done anything about it. Now, with the tariffs President Trump put in place, the markets overseas are opening up for those same farmers, and farmers will see a profit in the future. But remember, this is going to take time. The purpose of this aid package is to sustain farming for the next year. But when it comes to next year's crops, these farmers should be profitable. So let's go ahead and talk about our next topic of the day, which is healthcare. Politicians have failed to come to an agreement to extend the ACA subsidies. That means that millions of Americans are going to see their premiums go through the roof. Let's hear to what Speaker Johnson had to say.
Okay, over the last 2 years, this is investigators at the Government Accountability Office, okay? They submitted 24 fraudulent applications for the ACA subsidies, the Unaffordable Care Act subsidies, Obamacare, okay? Of the 24 fraudulent applications that they created, intentionally, to just see what would happen, 23 of them were approved. These applications were completely fraudulent. The investigators did not submit any Social Security numbers, citizenship documentation, or reported income documents. And 23 of the 24 applications were still approved. 18 of those, by the way, are still receiving coverages they were as of September of this year. That means the Obamacare exchange and insurers didn't verify any of the information they're supposed to under the law, and they proceeded to pay tens of thousands of dollars to insurance companies for people who do not exist.
90% fraud on those 24 applications. Is that where you want your money to go? To fraudsters, to insurance companies that are ripping off the American people? Ladies and gentlemen, these politicians are going to continue using us as pawns. They're going to continue using the American people as pawns. Remember, it's in the best interest of every political party to keep a portion of the population ignorant, uneducated. Why? Because then they can easily manipulate them. They want to keep that same portion of the population in this perpetual cycle of poverty, where they can offer you the smallest thing just to earn your vote. And oftentimes these parties do it in endless welfare programs. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to wake up as a society and understand exactly what these politicians are doing to us. They continue to play on the ignorance of the American people. But we also need to understand that we need to stop the widespread fraud that's happening in this country. We can't have another $8 billion going overseas to terrorist organizations like what happened in Minnesota. Listen to Senator Moreno talk about that.
Who said the following? Premiums will drop, and the average family will see premiums go down by $2,500 a year in 2014.
President Obama.
Is that a lie?
Yes.
Is there a single solitary American? If we asked this intrepid staff to go hunt down an American citizen, would we find an average family whose premiums have gone down in the last 11 years by $2,500 a year? Never have we enriched companies the way that Obamacare has enriched healthcare insurance companies at the cost to the American people. And it's a disgrace. Why don't we do all these things? Instead, what we do is we do performative outrage and managed failure of votes that we go on and say all kinds of nonsense, knowing there's no chance your bill's passing tomorrow. But do you want it to pass? Or do you just want to have a political issue so you can continue to get reelected? It's disgusting what happens in this town.
Look, to sum things up, I think everything's going to continue to escalate when it comes to Venezuela. I think the economy is going to continue to hurt, and I don't think we're going to see much change until next year when people start getting tax returns, when people start getting that money back from tips, from overtime, and everything else. And when it comes to healthcare, that is a big question mark right now. Hopefully, these guys can get together and come up with a solution for the American people. And that concludes our episode for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like, share, subscribe. Keep the comments coming. I'll make sure I answer all of them. And until next time, stay balanced.